So, good morning, everyone. I want to share this morning. I like to, what I like to teach is what I call practical Dharma, which is, what teachings, what methods can we use to really improve the quality of our lives, to really reduce the suffering in our lives. So, I want to share a simple, but I think pretty powerful practice, a specific practice today from Pema Chodron. Many of you know who she is. She's a Tibetan Buddhist nun whose writings and teachings I admire. She's written some wonderful books, and it's really this teaching, as though it sounds quite simple. It's a pretty strong antidote to that inner voice, that often punishing inner voice that many of us carry around. When we suffer from the demands of perfection and always worry about, are we doing something right? And she calls this practice, she describes it as, quote, one at the beginning and one at the end. And if you've read her stuff, you may be familiar with it. And as I said, it's deceptively simple. It really it comes down to, we set an intention in the morning and then we review that intention that same day in the evening. So it's a very hands-on practice. But the real teaching in that is how we review that teaching in the evening. What kind of um, demands, or what kind of lens do we see that review through? And this really kind of goes against um, our culture anyway. And I want to try to make the case for that. So here's how it works, and then we'll get into sort of breaking it down. So we wake up, and for that day, we choose a single manageable intention or a single manageable aspiration. And it's not something grandiose or too big, like, oh, today I'm going to achieve enlightenment, or today I'll never feel angry or annoyed. It's something much more grounded and honest and simple. Something like, today, may I notice when I get reactive. Today, may I pause before responding with frustration. Today, I want to offer kindness in some form to everyone I encounter. Something that um, feels doable. Now, this aspiration, as she teaches it, is not a command to do whatever we aspire to do perfectly. It is an invitation to be aware of what we aspire to do. Okay. And this distinction matters enormously. The difference between a command where you must today never be angry and just wanting to be aware when you feel that start to arise is big. A command sets up a binary. We either succeeded or we failed, and that's so much how we function in our culture. I've got an A or I've got an F on my paper. Whereas an invitation really opens a field of possibility. We're not demanding that we never get hooked by our habitual patterns. We're not demanding that we do something perfectly. We're simply asking of ourselves with this practice to notice when it happens, because we know that by just noticing, that in itself begins to break it up. That in itself begins to change the direction that we go in. And this is the difference between sort of white knuckling it our way through life, and actually learning something about these minds that we inhabit. The practical genius here is that it narrows the scope of what we can do. It doesn't take on too much. We live in a culture that celebrates this massive, instantaneous transformation, a total life overhaul. Read this book and your whole life will be transformed. This dramatic reinvention, which is a sure setup for frustration, for failure, and obviously for suffering. Genuine change in how we relate to ourselves and others does not work that way. We just can't go to some weekend workshop and come home transformed into this mellow, better, happy person or whatever. It happens, and this is why it often gets discarded, because it works through small, repeated actions, repeated acts of attention, repeated acts of just noticing. So what Pema Chodron is proposing, by choosing one thing daily, just setting an intention to pick one thing, give ourselves a realistic chance of remembering that intention through the day, as we move through the chaos and the demands of ordinary daily life. You know, she says if the morning aspiration is planting a seed, the evening review of that aspiration is tending the garden. Now, she warns us that the Western conditioning from which we all suffer can turn a liberating practice into just another instrument of self-punishment, another a form of harsh judgment. That's the trap. Most of us have deeply grooved habits of self-evaluation that look something like this. We scan our day for all the failures. We scan our day for all the mistakes, all the misstatements. We catalog them. We feel bad about ourselves, and then we resolve to do better tomorrow. It's all punishment based. It's all shame based. And there's no way we're not going to suffer from that. You know, in other words, we have this high bar and we resolve to be the person that we think we should be. Okay. And then we repeat the cycle the next day. You know, and this is not skillful self-reflection that we often talk about here. It is self-flagellation that wearing the mask of responsibility, that wears the mask of personal growth, but it is punitive. You know, Pema Chodron's approach is a radical alternative to that. When we connect with our aspiration, even once in the day, even briefly, we celebrate that. I remembered that I wanted to act with more kindness today, and I just did. Yay. And when we see that we see when we've failed to do it, when we even lost it, we even celebrate that because we've recognized that we missed, our aspiration for the day. So everything becomes something that we can learn from. This is not just the power of positive thinking or some self-deception. It is a precise and honest recognition of what awareness actually is as we seek to cultivate it in our daily lives and how it actually develops. It develops through small moments of noticing where we want to fulfill a single aspiration for the day. And we can change it every day. Think about what it means to notice at the end of the day that today I was really lost in reactivity. That noticing is awareness. That is progress. The version of me that was reactive all day and the version of me that can see clearly in the evening, it's a different thing. If I'm reactive without noticing it, I'm just going to keep playing that out day to day. But if I notice it, something shifts. And this capacity to recognize I was lost today is really a way of just finding ourselves because I recognized it. To punish myself for the recognition is to punish the very faculty I'm trying to cultivate. I recognized it. Don't use that as an opportunity to shame myself. Use it as an opportunity to celebrate the fact that I'm noticing better. From a purely practical standpoint, this approach aligns with what we know about how we actually change. It's the carrot versus the stick. Shame is not an effective motivator for long-term behavioral change. Yes, in the short term it does because we feel bad, but there's no lasting effect of that. It's a form of self-punishment that just makes us want to go hide somewhere. It may, yes, as I said, produce short-term compliance, but it erodes the inner resources that we need for genuine growth. It undermines it. And those resources are curiosity, self-awareness, self-trust, resilience, and the willingness to look at ourselves honestly and without judgment, without harshness. When we rejoice in these small moments of awareness, we're reinforcing those neural pathways of attention. We're reinforcing that tendency to pay attention. That's why I said incrementally this is important. We are telling our nervous system, this noticing is good, do more of it. It's teaching our nervous system, this noticing is good, do more of it. But if we instead shame ourselves for failing, we are doing nothing but reinforcing avoidance. I just don't want to go there again. With shame, the mind learns that self-examination, self-reflection leads to pain and suffering. It's not pleasant. And so we begin to resist the practice altogether because it just makes us feel lousy. It's exactly why so many well-intentioned self-improvement programs collapse within weeks because they're punitively based. They are built on a foundation of inadequacy, of failure. And Pema Chodron, in her wisdom, inverts this with her practice. She flips it on its head. It builds on a foundation of capacity, not failure. We already have built into us the ability to be aware. We already have it within us the ability to set an intention. We don't have to go looking for how to do this. We already have the ability to recognize when we've lost that thread. None of these have to be manufactured from scratch. We just have to invoke them but they need to be noticed. They need to be appreciated, and they need to be gently and incrementally strengthened. Now, there's one other subtlety worth mentioning here, and that is that this morning aspiration, if we decide to set one, it's not a goal in the conventional sense. It's not like, oh, I have to go from point A to point B to have achieved it. It's more like she talks about it as a compass heading. A goal says you either arrive at point B on time or today, or you fail because you didn't get from point A to point B successfully. Think about a compass heading, though. It says this is the direction I want to face and I want to begin to move toward. And when I noticed, that I'm moving in that direction, then that's a moment of success. This reframing alone from a goal to a compass heading dissolves this problem of perfectionism at its root. We cannot fail at a compass heading. I mean, all we do is point it there and then go in the direction to the best we can. We can only be oriented toward it, a compass heading, or notice that we've drifted. We can't fail at getting somewhere. And it provides us with useful information that the practice is working. Oh, I set an intention today to do something to not be reactive. Well, I was reactive, but I noticed that I wasn't reactive. The compass heading served me well today. So with this sort of shift in the metaphor we're going to use from a goal to a compass heading, think about how this would apply to something, as common as anger. If my aspiration is for today, may I not speak or act out of anger, and midway through the day I snap at one of my kids or one of my friends, the practice isn't ruined. It's just beginning because I noticed it. The moment that I recognized what happened, whether it's 5 seconds later or 5 hours later, is the moment the aspiration comes alive. I have turned back toward my compass heading. I'm heading in that direction. And that is not some consolation prize. It is the practice. That is the practice. And there's a softness to it, a lack of harshness to it. And this all in a culture that really profits and exploits our sense of insufficiency and inadequacy. You need to do this. You need to have this. You need to buy that. That's how you're going to feel better about yourself. A culture that sells us solutions to problems it has convinced us that we have. You're too much this, you're not enough that, you need to do more of this. We shift that to rejoice in our own awareness. And that is radical. It's a radical departure from the cultural message. It's not complacency. It's not settling for less. It's shifting the direction. It's shifting the compass heading. The recognition that awareness is the ground from which all meaningful change grows. It's the only way we're going to change in a sustainable way. That punishing awareness is a contradiction in terms. It's just not going to work. We can't hate ourselves, into being more compassionate. We can't shame ourselves into being more compassionate. We can't shame ourselves into being more present. We can't berate ourselves into being kinder. These qualities, these skillful qualities, arise from a mind that feels safe enough to be honest and to follow a compass heading, not set goals. Spacious enough to see clearly and encouraged enough to keep looking. That will never happen with shame and punishment. And this is what Pema Chodron is pointing toward. This simple exercise carries all that wisdom within it that I've just been talking about. A way of being with ourselves that is totally honest but not harsh, which is aspirational but not perfectionistic, and which is disciplined, yes, but not punitive. Okay, so think about it, and let me suggest that you spend some time this week trying it on. So in the morning, we choose one thing to pay attention to. Be specific. Don't be too grandiose. Make it achievable. Today I'm not gonna check my phone every 2 minutes, or today I'm not gonna yell at somebody, or don't pick something like, oh, I'm gonna be a better person today. How do we even define it? But something like, notice when I check my phone when I start feeling bored or uncomfortable, or pause for one breath before responding to when I feel criticized. Something that is doable. Okay. And then that evening, just how did I do today? Did I connect with my intention at any point? Or did I just sort of forget it? Okay, well, I just have awareness I forgot it, you know. And if it's a yes, feel good about it, really feel it. If no, if I forgot it entirely, notice that I'm remembering now that I forgot it entirely. I notice. Notice that we care enough to look, that caring, that looking, that awareness is not nothing. It is the seed of the whole practice. And then tomorrow we do it again. We pick something else. Same aspiration, could be a different one. There's no curriculum, there's no timeline, no rigid rules. There is the ongoing invitation to know ourselves a little more honestly and be open to it in a non punitive way, and to meet what we find with something other than contempt. I think the beauty of this one at the beginning and one at the end is that it asks almost nothing of us in terms of time or resources. It doesn't cost us anything. It doesn't even take out a big chunk of our day, but it restructures our entire relationship with ourselves, because it moves from this exhausting project of becoming someone else, someone more aligned with perfection, to this liberating practice of becoming more aware of who we already are. We don't have to radically transform ourselves. We just have to tap into who we really are and do it with greater awareness. It replaces this endless cycle of failure, goals, self-recrimination, new goals, new failure, with a sustainable rhythm of intention and recognition. It's not about lowering the bar. It's about understanding what the bar actually is, and that what it is not. And it is not perfection. The bar is awareness. And awareness, unlike perfection, which is unachievable, awareness is always available. In this moment, in the next, and in the gentle looking back at the end of the day. That is awareness. Awareness is a huge part of our practice, as you know. Every time we see ourselves clearly, without flinching, without punishing, we are practicing the deepest form of compassion that there is. And this compassion always begins at home, right here. So that's some thoughts on a simple but very powerful practice from Pema Chodron. Let me do this.